Intro. Fahrenheit 451 is one of the books that shows what a world without knowledge would look like. A world without books and a dystopian of what the world would look like if censorship was more prevalent in society. You might have also had to read it in school because it's one of those books that usually were assigned to be read for analysis, really, or something. Since the book has been exposed to a majority of people, it's a well-known story and concept since it's also, quote, very old, in a way. If it has an anniversary thing at Barnes& Noble, it's old enough to call it Unk. But anyways, let's go over the story quickly before talking about the actual meaning and stuff, just as a full recap. We get introduced to a world where books are burnt if anybody is caught with them. Our main character is Guy Montag, and he's married to Mildred. He's also a firefighter, but not the firefighter you think he is. A firefighter in this world is about burning books and making sure people don't read them. They can't get the knowledge. Montag also meets the new neighbor named Clarisse, like Silence of the Lambs' protagonist's name. Clarisse is the manic, dreamy pixie girl, where she has these weird hobbies and stuff. Fellas, we all know women don't have hobbies. Just kidding. But in this world, her hobbies are actually weird for, like, this world's context. Like, wanting to read and also appreciating nature and all that. Normal for some people in our world, but not in this world. That's just weird. But on one of the missions, Montag steals a book from a person who burns herself. Casual day. Then Montag wakes up very sick the next day, so he takes the day off. And he even suggests that maybe, just maybe, he should take a little break from being a firefighter. And then Mildred is like, please don't, I can't lose my totally real family. Montag then learns the values and lessons of why books are useless from Captain BAT. Because people have chosen other media forms to consume. Montag also is told that there was 24 hours between getting a book as a firefighter and burning it. And this applies for all firefighters. So this makes him kind of afraid just a little bit. But this is also before he tells Mildred that he's been hiding a stash of books in their ceiling. So, you win some, you lose some. That's just gambling. Mildred is like, nope, I am not keeping those, which makes Montag really mad. So he goes on a Discord server rant about the things he's gone through, including Clarisse's death. Montag goes to someone so that he doesn't sound insane to people who clearly aren't getting his points, and so he could just understand the books. He goes to Faber, who was an English professor before books were banned. He aura farms and tears the book, page by page, out in front of Faber to force him to help him, which is how Montag gets an earpiece from Faber. Then Montag heads home and to his silly little wife, who is with her friends, watching probably reality TV, aka her totally real family. Montag turns off the entertainment and tries to talk to them and get them to have an actual deep conversation. But it doesn't work. Nope. Wag the finger, bro. It didn't work. So he reads them part of a book, like a book of poems, and then Mildred says, No, this is normal. No, this is not normal. They see how stupid books are. As a defense, really, normalizing books as stupid. Once he reads, this causes a visceral reaction from the two women, aka Mildred's friends, and they leave. Was one of them crying, big tears and all, but Montag hides the books and then goes to work where BAT tells Montag he used to be a reader. But then the alarm goes off to burn some books, and when they get to the place, it's actually Montag's home. What? Question mark? Wow. Montag is then ordered to burn his house down with the flamethrower. He's also told that Mildred and her friends reported him, narcs, but He burns the house down and then burns Beatty after he threatens to hunt Faber down. The mechanical hound starts to chase Montague down and attacks him, but Montague burns it with the flamethrower. Then he is on his way to Faber's, but Faber tells him to go to the countryside as he's going to St. Louis to escape all this. Then Montague gets to the countryside where there's people who have books. They memorized the books and unlocked a form of photographic memory. When they speak book, they watch the city be bombed and killed as the war has started. And it also ended as nuclear wars would end quickly. And then Montague and the others survived the shockwave and now have to rebuild society in its entirety. So, what an ending. And then you close the final page of the book because the story's over. A world of censorship and the removal of knowledge is no better than one where knowledge is able to flourish. It's probably actually worse. Knowledge is what makes humans unique, and our search for it is what defines our identity. People will always have questions, and people will always want those questions answered. That's the power of curiosity, after all. In the book, the idea of relying on other forms of entertainment to get your thoughts is explored because that is an idea that really gets down to what makes us as a species unique. We can talk, sure, but we can also read. When we text other people and all of that, we are reading in a way, and we're taking in information to our brains, which is important. You have to take in information and be able to imagine stuff to thrive in life. You want to have a good time and use the power you have to your fullest potential. Create something unique. Use your imagination and don't rely on pictures and all of that to imagine something. No media is needed to imagine things like that and to use human creativity. We use art all the time when it comes to expressing our creativity. People make videos or films or whatever it may be. But that is the canvas people use to show and tell tales that they think people should be able to tell. And those stories have to reach people's eyes. People should they also absorb content, but also express their own opinions and creativity with that by absorbing that information. Stories are meant to be told so people can reflect on them. And let's take a look at why we have to take literature in school. Because it teaches us how to analyze stories and actually look at how people can tell stories and tell information to us. Because that's what stories are. A work of fiction or not, that's information that is laid out in a line and told to us point by point. But these stories are often what makes our lives the life we live. Usually, we often tell stories to others that we experienced, and sometimes that's how we bond. So stories are important to us, even if we don't think they are. Books are a form of stories that people can read, whether it be about someone's life or something that someone wants to share on a message, like with censorship in this book, for example. That's the main theme of the book. With censorship is the thing that tells us that we can't experience these stories. The idea of how far censorship goes is also seen in this book. And what that means is how far censorship will go. You ban one book for a reason. It asks the question, how far will that go? How willing are you going to be to stretch the definition of that reason? Every reason has its limits, but its limits are defined by who is talking about them. For example, some people don't read books because they're just too long, for example. My page number, like the max I would read, which is the reason behind it, may be shorter or longer than yours. And so that might affect the book if the person in charge of which book to read is changing between us. So not reading, it would be inconsistent and may depend on the day. Like, oh, we'll read it if you're in charge and not read it if I'm in charge. What? What's the logic there? That's what happens in the book, where that reasoning has expanded beyond and beyond to a point where the idea of being a book is kind of banned. The reasoning has changed, and the idea of censorship grew to be beyond one little thing. This is what would go against the idea of the privacy that these people have. The way that they can express themselves, no matter who it is, really. And the idea of privacy is one that's important to everyone. And in this book, the censorship that's realistically kind of shows that being broken. Censorship means that you just have to make sure that nobody is doing what you don't want them to do. So, should a few liberties be broken in order to do that? Maybe, just maybe. I don't know. It really depends on who you are, which, quarter are you in. But you can tell that there's a big government structure in the book, because that's how the firemen in this book are meant to be. They're doing the government's bidding and having to enforce the laws, acting basically like a second police force. That's what the censorship turns to in this, as it shows the destruction of history, of unique thought in the world. It's similar to what they did under the painters' rule in Germany, which is the kind of inspiration for this book, apparently. But also, it is a horrible event that the book is based off of. But that event also showed the most that a government was willing to go to get their goals complete. The dystopian way that knowledge is controlled to not help everyone, but only help a few certain amount of people. The book shows how was enough misinformation about things like books, or anything really. You can just brainwash anyone. And when Mildred relies on her parlor family, which is her, quote, totally real family, for entertainment, and basically sees herself as one of them, it forms this idea that she's been brainwashed into being in a parasocial relationship. It's a sign of disaster for her, as she doesn't have any other form of entertainment. She's inadvertently, basically, being controlled by this institution that she has just begun, to trust. And she's just like a bunch of other people in the book who are forced to believe the propaganda, forced to follow the limiting rules, and forced to live in a life that is made to brainwash them. That's what the world in the book kind of shows. The normalization of getting rid of people's freedom to learn and convincing them that it's just the right thing to do. And that's just how information spreads under censorship. If information is not able to flow, then it will really just be up to who's in government to control the stream of information. That's the largest form of government you could ever imagine, and it's also a form of dictatorship in a way. But information being spread is the most dangerous thing to the people who lie, and who lie to stay in charge, and all of that. And the control of information is something that is the more powerful, the more that information is spreading. You can convince people that the things made to harm them are actually made to help them. In this book, that's very much shown in the form of the new firemen. The firemen that burn books and don't allow people to read them. The force is actually evil and not allowing people to get the knowledge. I'm pretty sure that's a no-brainer, but it is also shown to be an effective force in propaganda. So, who knows? Propaganda spreads sometimes. Mildred believes books are useless, and so do her friends. They believe what the firemen do in the book is right, and a just cause. It's what happens when propaganda gets to a point of believability. You make people think that they are being helped, and they will think they're being helped if you give them only the information that supports your point. Misinformation spreads from the cherry picking of true information to spin a narrative. And with the firemen, They are the epitome of misinformation, like that trickling down graph. The fact that people in this world, be it fictional, I know, can make justification for them kind of shows the end result and how far that end result can bring humanity once enough people actually believe it to a life of, quote, normalcy and of bleakness in terms of basic information being the only thing that people can learn. This, like, this is also a good time to actually bring up one of the characters and why she works well in the book, and that's basically Clarisse. Clarisse is one of the characters in the book that breaks this idea of normalcy in the book, mainly because she's the manic dream pixie girl stereotype, but she's a beacon of hope in the world of dread. We don't see her a lot in the book, but what we really get from her is the idea of being different in a world that banishes anything against the status quo. In the book, she's shown to have weird hobbies, which is the definition of what a manic dream pixie girl is. And those hobbies are what we see as normal. She's someone who tries to get more knowledge, but can't because the way you get more knowledge is banned. She's set as this character that is unique, like a flower growing in concrete, essentially. You wouldn't expect to see someone like her, but she's here to show that people do exist on that side of the aisle. The innocent people in the world that normalizes gruesome subjects, and they are sadly subjected to it. It's why her death in the book feels like a sudden shock, because she's the flower in the concrete that gives it like a little hope, and then it's like someone just stepped on it and someone just killed her. And since that happened, it makes the world feel more hopeless. Like the world is going to bad stuff. And there's no turning back. That's what happens after we figure out about her death, which is really the nail in the coffin. In a world that isn't run by evil, there should be people who aren't manipulated living there. But like, clearly that's not happening in this world. But after Clarisse dies, it's really just like this sense of dread. Not that evil and censorship is won just yet, but that it's on the cusp of victory. It's a sign that innocence in the world where censorship is key is just a sign of weakness, not a sign of exploring the unknown. When Montauk learns about this in the book, he's shocked because it was the one sign of hope he had. And it's gone. Boom. It just got stepped on. It's dead. The one sliver of uniqueness that was brought into a tunnel vision he's had about this world, gone. Since he works probably one of the most mentally draining jobs for his time, we're able to actually see him react to someone who has hope and who has a creative mind in a way. This is the exact opposite of the world he lives in and the life he currently lives in the book. So, like how with every book burning session that he's forced to do, there seems to be very negative people or people who bring a depressing scene because he's the one who's taking away their creativity and freedom. You know, that's just what it does. That's how they mentally drain you. And his life gets harder and harder when he goes home to Mildred, where she is hanging out with her totally real family and her parlor family, which is a family that isn't real, but in her mind it's real. Wow, parasocial relationship. This guy's living the worst life ever. And she spends more time with them than she does, like, actually Montauk. So that's something that's pretty depressing to actually come back to. No happiness, no love, no family. You have nothing. This guy has nothing. You get nothing because in this world it seems like you're guaranteed nothing but a false sense of happiness, essentially. And may not be good for you long term, but in a world of short term boosts, that doesn't matter as much. And you're just forced to live in it like that. Different thing for a different day, I guess. But overall, the idea of Clarisse, rather than just Clarisse herself as a character, is why she's an interesting character in this world. Her death means that the world has no saving grace and has nobody who would be willing to try to challenge that status quo. And in any world, that's what you need in order to be kept fine and keep up with the times. Because especially in the books world, but in the real world too, I guess, as well, people should challenge the status quo and always ask questions because that's how you get places. Never stay stationary in the way of changing society for the better. And never stay stationary when the progress goes down against you as well. That stationary was shown in the form of, like, Montauk before Clarisse died, and that moving forward was Clarisse trying to ask questions. But then she died, and that's just how the book is, I guess. Overall, with Fahrenheit 451, it shows a warning of what could be when there's too much control by overlying powers, whether that be corporations or the government itself. The fact that this book has been banned in a few school districts kind of shows how some of them know that it's a warning. It's also really ironic that this book is banned about a book being banned. The book really does a good job at showing what it wanted to warn about in society and with censorship. But since there's actually no numbers for this, just know that 84% of readers on Google liked this book. I would say I'm part of that 84% because personally, I would give it a 9 out of 10. I really thought it was good, but if you have a different opinion or want to comment your thoughts below, you can. That's your decision. Other than that, please like and subscribe. Pretty please.